Before you buy a home or move into an area between now and the next 10 years, you had better do a few things. You had better check out all the environmental disaster maps, high-frequency, severe weather maps, and the building department's zoning department requirements. Find out if you are in any empowerment zone. If you don't do this, you might lose your property, home, and life savings. I've been making videos for 20 years, and seeing all my old videos come true was interesting. It's not because I can forecast the future. Still, nobody can. But when you know the end game and don't watch propaganda television, you have time to study, read, and research. It is not tricky rocket science to figure things out. In one of my videos 8 years ago, I stated that many locations in California would not be covered by insurance in the future for fire. And not today, in 2025, thousands of newly burnt down homes in California will not be covered by insurers. People remain ignorant and never spend time researching to see what's happening. This video will be about your homeowner's insurance, what to expect, and why certain things are happening. I cannot get into every aspect because I can write a whole encyclopedia. I'll try to keep it simple, short, brief, and concise, and you should still do your research. You don't have to watch my videos to get these opinions. You need to do your research and turn off the mainstream because they will always steer you wrong. This video won't get into things like weather modification or topics people may be considered a conspiracy. We can do those videos later, and I have done many of them on the YouTube channel Clevelandmarko. Many of my videos were taken down on Facebook and YouTube because they didn't meet their guidelines. Eight years ago, California had fires, and because of the fires in other locations, insurance companies had to pay a lot of money. They decided to make maps. They would make these maps because hurricanes destroyed cities, tornadoes destroyed towns, floods destroyed dams and bridges, and fires destroyed real estate. So when they make these maps, they implement them, meaning if you live in any of these areas, there is a high probability you cannot be insured or covered by a particular disaster. If you live in any of these map zones, maybe sell and grab your money. We're not going to get into poisonous air, in the radioactive air, and the particulates of low micron size that damage people's lungs and cause cancer, along with all types of ailments. I have other videos on these poor air quality conditions, which is another reason to leave. Fires cause nasty and sometimes even radioactive air, as they did 8 years ago in California. So now, in 2025, we have more fires in California, which are always bigger and better. And guess what? A lot of people will not be covered by insurance. They're on a fire map, and insurance companies will not cover you. So all these rich movie stars in these million-dollar homes may not get all their money. Now you're wondering why we have so many severe weather events, and some may say it's because we have better news coverage. The world-leading entities want to call it global climate change, and the main reason is to make their agendas happen. Some of you think it is for carbon taxing, and some people might call it population control, and others will call it conspiracy. First, if you think what happens today is something they decided to do now, you're wrong. These things are planned for at least 40 years. Without getting into too much detail, the main agenda is to move people to high-density zones where they can control every aspect of their lives. So when you hear today terms like smart cities, smart growth, sustainable cities, and all that mumbo-jumbo, it's nothing new. It has been in the makings for decades, going back to 1964, the Club of Rome in every Earth Summit following. I've made videos on YouTube on these topics. Let's look at one. Agenda 21, now over 35 years old, is everything in the UN Agenda 21 book has been done or is being done at warp speed. It is being done through NGOs and public assistance and is something you and I never get to vote on. It's also being done incognito. You don't know it's being done. Did you vote for your bike paths, roundabouts, or one bus lane to your towns? They know we won't have nearly as many cars on the roads in 10 years. How do they move people into high-density zones? Some are moved by weather, usually by weather modification, some by job loss, and some by land grabs. For example, in America, we have the Bureau of Land Management. You would think this is a friendly organization, but it's designed to evict people from their land, rezone their land, and create rules and regulations for a land grab. You remember all the cattle ranchers who were kicked off. Then the loggers were kicked off the land several decades ago. What about all the people who lost land in the Everglades? These were no accidents. Do you think veganism or non-meat eating diets is a fad or an accident? I can assure you it's not. It's been socially engineered. The kids in college come out radical thinking and not eating meat and not knowing how to survive other than order follow, get in line, and do as they are told. Vegetarianism is all about removing cows, chickens, and pigs from the land because they trample the soil and keep the future planned core zones, corridors, and buffer zones from growing, which I will cover briefly in a minute. I have full videos of this topic under the Wildlands projects, giving the land back to nature. This is happening all over the world right now. This is just one small part of the world's big puzzle. They want to take the land because wildland projects are occurring worldwide. Wildlands projects are where you take land away from people, create cores for the animals, and corridors for animals to travel, all surrounded by substantial buffer zones to keep the people out. Of course, they'll have high-density population zones people move into, which will be less than 3% of the entire planet's landmass. If you think I am making this stuff up, stop this video and put your head back in the sandbox. We already live in 3% of the landmass, which comprises 95% of the population. The other 5% of the population lives in the other 7%. It is this 7% they want back. The other 90% of Earth's landmass, including ice coverings, is uninhabitable, and most of this large landmass has not been walked by a man unless Bigfoot is considered a man. So, when the BLM Bureau of Land Management changes the codes and says you can't dig wells to feed your grapes for your wineries, it's all part of a plan. Furthermore, old bridges and dams in small towns have stopped being fixed, and they are pulverizing the roads so the people can't repair them. They also pulverize the streets so the sun cannot reflect into the atmosphere, which they claim is part of our CO2 problem. The bottom line is that the towns disappear if there are no roads, bridges, dams, or post offices. We now have hundreds of ghost towns in the USA. This has been happening for decades, unbeknownst to the collectives, because they've skewed our minds so badly from propaganda and repetitive televised programming. Russia, emails, he lies, fire, flood, hurricane, tornado, Epstein, lone shooters, political corruption, cats, dogs, and more. So if you think you can live off the grid, go for it. Make sure you hide in places that are not accessible, because government officials will find you. Depending on how well you hide, they will eventually see you today, tomorrow, or 10 years from now. Conversely, if you live in the city, you must be an order-following collective and do as you're told. Another issue is not getting suckered into buying property in these insurance map areas. A farmer may be selling his land because he was roped into a land usage change that only allows him to grow alfalfa. This is done through zoning changes, ordinance changes, and new laws enforced by new policemen like the Bureau of Land Management. You don't get to vote on these issues. The mainstream media never publishes these issues. So, you might consider buying this property with cash, but you find out you can't build the development, nor can you drill well to feed cows. Returning to the 2025 California fire example, the people there should have seen this and known this should have unloaded their multi-million-dollar homes, taken the money, and run. However, whoever bought their homes would get stuck holding the bag. And you know what? This is how you stimulate an economy and control the population, create new laws and regulations, more enslavement. Our governments keep telling us we need to tax the rich. They could mean this, like burning down their billions of dollars worth of properties and making the money disappear. In the past, a way to stimulate the economy was to create a war or a proxy war or disperse a virus. All of these methods worked great because they stimulated the economy. However, making billions of dollars disappear is another way of taxing the rich and stimulating the economy. We have entered World War III. This war is not against countries. It is about owning the weather. If you own the weather, you own the world. World War III is a war of perceptible water and virtual water. Over the past 20 years, I have made many videos on this topic. Our world leaders meet in societies like the Bilderberg, CFR, Trilateral Commission, CWF, Round Table, Club of Rome, United Nations, European Union, Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones, 33s, and others, and make the world agendas. If you think the world is running on the spur of the moment, you are delusional. It's all planned. Your presidents don't run this country or any country. They are the puppets who are useful idiots to these groups. So how else do you control a planet? You regionalize everything, create an authority like the UN, police a world with something called NATO, and repair problems with the CIA. This puts you on a prison planet and controls what you do, what you eat, where you work, and what you do with your time. Social engineering puts you into the mindset of propaganda and repetitive programming and keeps you medicated and poisoned, which, by the way, also controls population growth. Our population stopped at 8 billion, and now it's starting to crash worldwide for many reasons, which I have shown on YouTube videos. You need to have assets in multiple forms. Some crypto, some in money, some in land, some in food, some in silver, and even some collectibles. You should also consider growing your food and preserving it with water bath canning and pressure canning. You need to learn to trade, not throw things out. The world is changing so fast that it will be hard to keep up. You must quit watching television and being a slave to sports, news, unnecessary vacations, and fancy sports cars, because these all waste your time and savings. Most of these wants are not even your wants. These wants have been planted into your brain. You need to start living your reality and living smart, working way less only for your immediate needs. You did not need an $80,000 electric car or a home on a lake with a swimming pool. Ask the people from the California fires how this worked out for them. In conclusion, study the areas before moving, buying, or renting. I have a book on Amazon called Fix Your Toxic Home and Live Longer, and the entire first chapter talks about bad areas to live. Plus, you need to buy homes in properly insurable areas. I am 63, and if I live to be 93, I will see that roughly 97% of the world's landmass will not be insurable. Please like, subscribe, rate, and hit the bell for future videos. I will provide a few links in the comment section below for some of my books on Amazon.